I am your host, Noah Love, and today we are going to be go over some big topics. It is Thursday, November the 21st, 2024. It's currently snowing outside here in Indiana, but we're going to talk about a lot today. Then we're going to talk about the new college football. Well, it's a couple days after, but the new CFP top 25 is still recently news. And we may even get into some college basketball talk early here on the top 25. I know there's been some upsets with Alabama losing to Purdue and then Purdue going and losing on the road to Marquette. And then Alabama did beat Illinois. And then Wisconsin beating Arizona at home. It's just a lot of talk. I'll give you some of my early takeaways from that. Also, we'll preview some of the NFL playoff picture uh, to see. I'll give you my thoughts on some of the week 12 prediction and also some of my week 11 takeaways. The Cavs on Tuesday night, I know they played a back to back on Tuesday night. They got their first loss to the Celtics. I will talk about that. Then I will preview, mm, IU versus Ohio State, the biggest game in the country this week, but it's at big noon. It's big noon kickoff on Fox. Gus Johnson, Joe Klatt, Jenny Taft in the shoe. If Indiana wins, they go to the Big Ten championship game. Or if Indiana wins and Penn State loses, they go to the Big Ten championship game. IU, if they win and Penn State wins, they have to obviously beat Purdue to get there. If Ohio State wins, if Ohio State wins, obviously they still have to win next week because even though they will have a win over Indiana, if they somehow drop it to Michigan, that will put them at two losses in the Big Ten. Indiana will only have one. Indiana would get in as well. So a lot to discuss here. Um, but let's start really with some college basketball talk quickly here. The top 25 here in the AP. I know some teams has lost. We'll start from 25 up. 25 we got Illinois. 24 we got Rutgers. 23 we got Texas A&M. 22 we got St. John's. 21 we got Florida. 20 we got Arkansas. 19 we got Wisconsin. 18 we got Cincinnati. 17 is Arizona. Don't know why Wisconsin isn't in front of Arizona compete considering they beat them, that's whatever. Number 16, we have Indiana, who actually plays tonight. 15, Marquette. 14, Creighton. 13, Baylor. 12, Duke. 11, Tennessee. 10, North Carolina. 9, Kentucky. Hey, that Kentucky Duke game was a fantastic game. Kentucky won. Mark Pope, heck of a job. Number 8 is Alabama. Yes, they dropped after being Purdue. Number 7 is Houston. Number 6 is Purdue, but they won't be there next week as they lost to Marquette, obviously. Number 5 is Iowa State. Number 4 is Auburn. Number 3 is Gonzaga. Number 2 is UConn. Number 1 is Kansas. All right. I'll give you my quick thoughts. I think the best team in the country right now is honestly it's Kansas. Now we will learn a lot about UConn coming up. I mean, considering they're in Maui upcoming. They're in that Maui tournament. Then in December they get a big slate of games. They get Baylor. They get Baylor at home. They're at Texas, and then they're at. I think that it's Gonzaga coming there. No, it's a game in New York City, but against Gonzaga. But it's basically going to be a UConn home game in that. So yeah, they're in Maui. Also, Baylor St. John's plays tonight, which will be an interesting matchup. But yeah, some of these early games for college basketball, fantastic. Um, Obviously, next week is Thanksgiving. I will be back home in my regular setup, so I may get some videos out, depending. But obviously, the Maui Invitational, UConn, they start with Memphis. There's also another tournament, Thanksgiving Hoops. You got the Battle for Atlantis as well. Indiana's in that, Louisville's in that, and some of the other teams. So we'll get to see what some of these other teams are made of. But right now, Kansas is the best team in the country because I think, well, UConn obviously they haven't played anybody. I they beat Kansas beat North Carolina in a crazy game. By the way, Kansas does play Duke on the 26th in Vegas. Again, that's gonna be a massive game. I'm excited to watch that. Cooper Flag in this roster. Look, Cooper Flag is he's kind of had to adjust early, but Duke had a tough loss to Kentucky. That's a game, honestly, that they probably should have won. But yeah, that game's happening Tuesday night, 9 o'clock. Again, in terms of the year and time of the year, this is your best time to be a sports fan, honestly, because college football is heating up. Obviously, the playoff race is heating up, and the NFL is heating up. The NBA, you've got the in-season tournament now, and those games are great. Also, December basketball in the NBA is always heated, and then obviously you have college basketball, which these December matchups early really nice. Now Kansas still has some challenges coming up. Obviously, we talked about the one against Duke. They play at Creighton um in November. I think it's at Creighton or it's a neutral site. Yeah, they go to Creighton again. I don't remember the last time they played, but Creighton, that's always a tough environment when you go to them. And then they have at Missouri, which look, Missouri wasn't good last year, wasn't good at all. But again, it's sort of a rivalry there. So I expect those teams to play hard. To me, the most interesting team in the country so far has been Auburn. I know Gonzaga has gotten 2 wins, but look, Auburn has a great win over Houston. Houston, by the way, they dropped after that. I think Houston's still going to be really good. I think Houston, the way they play defense, I think they're going to be fine. The freshmen are taking over. Look, I'm excited because look, on the 26th, you've got Houston versus Alabama. I will be excited to watch that again. Some of these great games, but I really just do think they're interesting because they are young still. They play full of energy. But look, Auburn again. We are going to see what they are made of as well, because in December they play and not even that. Okay, their next game is Iowa State, but then in December you play Duke in the SEC ACC Challenge versus Ohio State, who does have a win against Texas A&M. Know how Ohio State has a bad loss, but I think Ohio State's still really good. And then you do play Purdue on the 21st. And then you obviously have that Christmas break, and then you pretty much start conference play after that. What to me, if you're talking about best teams in individual conference, I think the two best teams in the Big Ten are Purdue and Indiana. Indiana, I think is really good. I think Mackenzie and Baco's development has been really crucial. I think Miles Rice, he's the best. He's gonna be a really great two-way guard for Indiana. I think Ballo, you need him on the floor in terms of rim protecting. I think I like the role he plays. And also, I think Malik Renew, again, in this offense, I think he's what, the third, fourth option, potentially at some time fifth, depending on Cannon Carlisle. I think Indiana has depth this year, which is what they didn't have last year. It's a more veteran team, and it's also a talented team. So I think Indiana is going to compete for the Big Ten title. I like Purdue. The development of Trey Kaufman Wren has been key. They have the best. I think there could be an argument they have the best point guard in America with Braden Smith. Braden Smith and Lawyer are a great guard duo. So in the freshman CJ Cox, I mean, he had a heck of a game against Alabama. But again, it's early. We it's so early in the season. It's great to see some of these early season matchups to see where you are. But again, it's so tough. I know Arkansas interests a lot of people. I know they played Baylor, and I know they lost by 5. They were struggling in that game. Again, on Thanksgiving, we actually get to see them against Illinois. And honestly, I'm gonna watch that over the Tommy DeVito versus Cooper Rush on Thanksgiving. I feel bad for Burkhardt and Brady that they have to call that game. But yeah, college basketball so far, I think in the year, I mean, we'll obviously see what's to come. I don't know if there's Kansas is really good. They have flaws. I think UConn is still really good. Again, under Dan Hurley, will they three-peat? I'm not sure. Again, they have schedule here. They'll have to see. But I think Gonzaga is really good as well. So again, we will see um, because there will be teams that will surprise us and will emerge. Again, it is early in the season. Most teams are 4 games in, so I think we'll really start to see around January, a little bit February, see where teams are. But December is going to be a good measuring stick for some of these teams that are going to play these non-conference games before conference play. All right. The new CFP Top 25 came out, and if you saw on my Instagram story, the Don't Argue with the Facts podcast is going to be down below in the description. I said the list sucks. First of all, 25th is Illinois. Oh, uh, look, they beat Michigan State. I know some stuff happened where you can get back in. 24 is UNLV. I have no problem with that. 23 is Missouri. Missouri lost, but they don't drop. They don't. I know they lost a close game, but they don't drop at least a spot. Okay, 22 is Iowa State because they won, and some teams thought they got back in it. They're finally giving some respect to Arizona State after they stopped Kansas State. Kansas State fell all the way out. Good for Arizona State. By the way, they have a massive game with BYU this week, which if they win, obviously Colorado's in first place, but it would be crazy if Colorado got upset by Kansas, who is playing well. I'll talk about that in a little bit because I actually think that's a trap game for Colorado. I actually think a lot of people are just thinking they'll steamroll them. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. But yeah, 22 Iowa, 21 Arizona State, 20 is Tulane, 19 is Army. Again, Army goes to Yankee Stadium to play Notre Dame. They haven't beat Notre Dame since like the 1950s. Again, that'll be an interesting game to watch considering Army has the number one defense in points allowed. That'll be an interesting game to watch. Tulane and Army will play in the American Championship, which look, if Army beats Notre Dame, they have a pass to the playoff. Now, it all depends on what Boise does, obviously, but there is a plan. South Carolina's 18. South Carolina is a sleeper team that if some teams lose, and if obviously I think they'll beat whoever they play this week, and then I think they'll go on the road and beat Clemson, which that would pretty much end Clemson's hopes at large, which I think they're pretty much done already. If that happened, they could, because they'd be 9-3, they could maybe sneak into a playoff spot. I don't know. It would depend. Obviously, 17 Clemson, 16 is Colorado, who we will talk about. 15 is Texas A&M, who again, as long as they beat Auburn on the road, they set up a 7:30 p.m. matchup on the Thanksgiving weekend. It's them in Texas, who they haven't played since Texas A&M left the Big 12 in 2011. The Battle of Texas winner is guaranteed a spot in the SEC championship game, as long as Texas obviously doesn't stumble. BYU fell to 14 after the loss to Kansas. Again, BYU, it was sort of the Miami syndrome where BYU, they played all these close games and you just knew at some point it was going to come back to bite them. The team that I think that is underrated coming up in this whole thing is SMU. Their only losses to BYU, by the way, I know they have the same record. They have the same record, and BYU beat them. So why is BYU not ahead of them? That doesn't make any sense. But SMU, I actually think they have a good shot to win this ACC and get in. And honestly, now them being potentially ranked lower than Boise, that's interesting. I'm gonna watch for that. That'll be interesting. Obviously, Boise is 12 right now. They would get first round bye. 11 is Tennessee, which they will be the first team out. Which honestly is brutal because looking at this, okay, number 10 is Georgia. They just lost to them. Number 9 is Ole Miss. Again, Ole Miss has losses at to Kentucky at home, which a 4 win Kentucky team at home, which is a brutal loss, and then they lost on the road to LSU, who is not that good. They're 6-4. I know Ole Miss beat Georgia, and they have a good win against South Carolina, where they dominated. Okay, now number 8 is Miami. All right, I guess I don't think Miami would beat Ole Miss or Georgia. But okay. Uh, 7 is Alabama, and this goes back to my Tennessee point. Tennessee, yes, they just lost to Georgia, but they also beat Alabama by 7 points in Neyland. So the fact that Tennessee would potentially be out and Alabama would be in, and with the same record, and Tennessee would have beaten Alabama. It's crazy to me. Number 6 is Notre Dame. Again, that's way too damn high. Notre Dame, we've seen this before. Notre Dame would, I don't think this year, and I love what Marcus Freeman is doing. I love Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love. I love what they're doing on offense in terms of the run game and the pass game. But honestly, I don't think Notre Dame, if you were to ask me who am I picking today, I don't think they're better than Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, and I think Tennessee and Miami are toss-up games. I don't think they're better than any of those teams, but I digress. Also, they have a loss to NIU. Okay. Yeah, Miami. I mean, them and Miami have the same record. And yes, Miami lost on the road, but at least that was to Georgia Tech. I mean, NIU, who's like in seventh in the MAC. Come on, bro. But number 5 is Indiana. Look, I know about the strict schedule and all that. Look, they'll go to play Ohio State uh, this week. I think Indiana has a good chance in that game, but it really depends on what Ohio State does. If Ohio State coaches get out coached or coached conservatively, then I think Indiana will beat them. Because I think Indiana, I mean, is one of the best, they're one of the most well coached teams in the country. Coach Signetti has done a heck of a job there, obviously. Um, I know they're 5. I get it. They haven't played anybody, but when you don't play anybody, you stomp them. I know they had a bad half against Michigan, but prior to that, they were stomping them. But it, it you're gonna have a bad half. I mean, you're not gonna play a 10 or 11 straight games of perfect football. But if Indiana goes out here and let's say they lose by 3 to Ohio State, they're gonna be and they beat Purdue. They're gonna be in the playoffs because they proved they could hang. Like it was not an insane loss. Now if they beat Ohio State, obviously they're guaranteed in. Guaranteed in. Penn State 9-1. Look, Penn State their only tough game they lost by 7 to Ohio State, but it's not like they've been destroying teams again. Indiana destroyed UCLA on the road, which Penn State struggled at home with UCLA. Penn State struggled with USC. It took them overtime to put them away. They've been Penn State had been on the struggle was on the struggle city bus. Now they're blowing out teams, and that's impressive. Okay, again, Texas, they haven't beat anybody. Their best win is Vandy. They were struggling with Arkansas, which honestly, if Arkansas had an offense, they would have won that game. Honestly, Arkansas had Texas on the ropes there for a minute trying to mount a comeback. Again, 2010. Shout out to the Texas defense, who is really good. But number two is Ohio State, and number one is Oregon. To me, two most consistent teams in the country. That's fine. Yeah, the rank. I have major problem with the rankings, obviously, but we'll see. What shakes. Obviously, the Ohio State Indiana game is going to have a big deal. Notre Dame beats Army, if Notre Dame loses to Army, Notre Dame's done. Notre Dame has to win out because you can't overcome a loss to Army and NIU. You just can't do it, especially when you're not in a conference and you don't have a chance to win that conference title. Done. In terms of who will be in the title game for each conference, look, I don't know, man, because ACC, it's a three-team race here. SMU, Clemson, Miami. That's tough. Big Ten, obviously, it'll become more. I think Oregon's already clinched a spot in Indianapolis, so they'll be there no matter what. With the win against Wisconsin, they've clinched a spot in Indianapolis. So even if they lose to Washington, they're going no matter what. So that's good. The winner of IU and Ohio State looks like they're going. The only way Penn State would get in is if one of those teams has just loses a dumb game. But if Penn, honestly, even if yeah, so yeah, that's that's cooked pretty much. But obviously, I want to preview some of the games, and I really think the game to watch is Ohio State Indiana. It's a top five matchup. We know that, but a sneaky game that a lot of people here need to look out for. A sneak, and I'm not just saying this because of a recency bias, but a sneaky game that people need to watch out for is Ole Miss going to Florida. I'm gonna tell you why. Yes, Ole Miss is 11-point favorites, but Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin is known to lose a game he shouldn't lose. Now he's already lost to Kentucky. Do I think he loses to Florida? Florida's undefeated when DJ Lagway plays the whole game. So again, who's to say that Florida doesn't upset Ole Miss? I think that's a very real possibility. I think their offense is better with Lagway in terms of the dual threat he provides. I think that defense is playing well. I know they had the bad game versus Texas. I think their defense is playing better. I really think Florida can get pull back to back upsets. And honestly, if they do that and Billy Napier finishes 7-5 in the way they finished, I mean, if Lagway stays, who's to say they can't be an 8-9 win team next year? And at that point, if you're potentially a 9-win team next year, who's to say? And again, that's all hinges on what happens in this game. Who's to say you're not knocking on the door of a playoff, especially in a 12-team one? So yeah, I really think. I mean, and also I just gotta say this: some of these SEC teams that get some of these, it's ridiculous, man. Some of the teams that get some of these games late in the season is ridiculous. Last week it's for Alabama on the playoff push. It's freaking Mercer. This week on what could be a massive week. Georgia's favored by 42 against freaking Massachusetts, and Tennessee's favored by 41.5 against UTEP. You gotta do something about that. That's ridiculous. Again, people are saying go to 9 conference games. I'm in favor of that. Another sneaky game to watch out for. Penn State at Minnesota on CBS. I honestly think Minnesota, they're 6-4. Yes, I know they're coming off of a loss, but they were to at Rutgers, but they were white hot up until that point. I think this is prime Minnesota. I think they are very prime for an upset here. I really do. I just think Penn State, it could be a game where they struggle. And again, PJ Fleck, they're known hitting in the mouth. We're going to keep coming. We're going to be the more physical football team that day. I really think Minnesota can pull this off, this upset off. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, Clemson placed the Citadel in the middle of a playoff push. What are you doing, ACC? Like, South Carolina plays Wofford. Like, gang, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? Like, what in the what in the F are we doing? What are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? And I will continue to say, what are we doing? Because why? Now, heading back up, before we preview Ohio State and Indiana, I want to get to the Big 12. It's a massive week in the Big 12. BYU at Arizona State. Arizona State coming off of their dominating upset of Kansas State, looking to have a chance at the Big 12 title game. BYU looking to pretty much secure a spot there, which they've been one all year, but now it's getting a little dicey here. Colorado looking, because if they win this game, they've got Oklahoma State at home. They'll win that game. I think they'll get in to the Big 12 title game. But it's going against Kansas. Kansas, who just upset BYU. Kansas, who was playing for a bowl game. Kansas, who has played a ton of close games. They've just found a way to lose them, but now they're starting to find a way to win them. Kansas, Jalen Daniels, not Jaden, Jalen. I mean, you got to think. I mean, this is going to be obvious. And they just beat Ohio. They didn't beat Iowa State, too. And that was in dominating fashion. You got to think about it like this: Kansas, a 6-point loss to Illinois, a 3-point loss to UNLV, a 4-point loss against West Virginia where they were leading the whole game, a 4-point loss at Arizona State, who is a really good football team, as we know of, and a 2-point loss at Kansas State. All games they could have won. All games they could have won, and some of them games they should have won. I think Colorado's sleeping on. They may be sleeping on Kansas. I like Neal. I think that defense is playing better. I think Kansas has a shot to pull the upset now. Will they? No. I think Shador and Travis Hunter, they make 1 or 2 plays down the stretch and they end it. But again, it's in Lawrence, Kansas. It'll be interesting to see. It'll probably be a sold out crowd. It'll be a tough atmosphere. It will be an interesting game to watch. I really think Colorado is on upset alert. Oh, and it's not even at Kansas, it's at Arrowhead in Kansas City. So again, that's going to be interesting. Now, I think Colorado fans will travel, but that game, I'm excited to watch that. Kansas, if they win that game, I think they go to a bowl. Colorado, you can lose the game. It's a must win, obviously, to get into the playoff. You're going to need that. BYU at Arizona State. I actually think Arizona State at home, they're going to win this game. Arizona State has been sneaky good all year. Now people are starting to give them the recognition they deserve. I think Arizona State's going to beat BYU. I really do. I really do. They're hitting their stride at the right time. Their offense is playing phenomenal. Their defense is coming off of playing phenomenal against Avery Johnson. Yes, they had trouble stopping the run in that game, but they did force 2 picks on Avery Johnson. Sam Levitt, I think he's playing well right now. Scatterbo, the run game, it's working. Jordan Tyson had a big game last game. Again, Arizona State, there's not a lot of big names, but they are sneaky good. Watch out. Now let's go to the game of the day, IU and Ohio State. Indiana here. Indiana interests me because their ability to run the football is going to be put to the test. If they can run the football like they've done all year, on top of Curtis Work's pass game, I think they beat Ohio State. I think if Ohio State does not get pressure to Curtis Rourke, I think in terms of Indiana's production, it will look like the Oregon game. I think the way Oregon sliced and diced them in that spread offense, I think because Indiana runs a similar thing, I think Indiana will dice them up. Curtis Rourke has been fantastic this year. Elijah Sherrod with Omar Cooper. Keyshawn Williams made a couple big plays last week. I think the keys are for Indiana. On the offensive side, I think it's Justin Ellis and Tyson Long. Can those two backs just, even if it's 2 to 3 yards, can they grind that out? Can they make sure they're not in second and long and third and long against a very good Ohio State defense? And then on the defensive side for them, it's about the corners. Yes, your front seven's got to get pressure, but can you hold up against Jeremiah Smith and Mecca Buka? Can they do it? I don't know if they can. Ohio State, now again, Ohio State's going to try to run the ball with Trayvon Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. Indiana's been really good against the run this year. By the way, Seth McLaughlin, their center, the Alabama transfer, who was having a great year, is he tore, I think, what is it? I think it was Achilles or ACL, one of the two in practice. He's out, which is a big blow because yes, their O line has been struggling, but they finally look like against Penn State. They got a combination that worked. That's what it felt like. They got a combination. Okay, this works, and obviously, last 5 minutes you chew the clock, you run it. Ohio State gritty win. If Ryan Day loses this game, there will be talks of firing him, and honestly, I can't blame them too much for that. But this is going to be an outstanding game. If you're asking me who wins, I think Indiana wins. I think with Signetti resigning, this is a start of a run. Of a run. What do you mean by a run? I mean a run of just, I think maybe they win. I don't know what would we say, a run of maybe them winning 10 plus games every season, competing for the Big Ten. Because Kirk Signetti says, "I win. Google me." I think Indiana wins this game, probably 30, 33-27. I think it probably comes down to Will Howard trying to make a play late, and I just think maybe he can't do it. And I think Indiana just finds a way to win. A lot of people are saying this is going to be a blowout. I don't think it's a blowout either way. Some people are saying blowout Indiana. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. If that happens, Ryan Day, and to me, I haven't been an advocate of firing Ryan Day. I know the losses to Michigan hurt guys, but I will say, look at the overall record, look at the big picture. Look at the big picture. I think it's harder to. Now, I think it's harder to fire a guy like James Franklin, who again I think winning 10, 11 games at Penn State is harder than winning 10, 11 games at Ohio State because Ohio State has so much NIL money, the brand. They can get pretty much whoever they want in terms of recruiting. So again, think I I think if Ryan Day loses, there will be talk of losing his job. I think rightfully so. I don't think Ryan Day can lose this game. Often, I it's going to be tough if that run game struggles early. Will they go one dimensional? Now, look, Will Howard can sling it. It'll be interesting to see how IU plays Jeremiah Smith. It'll be interesting to see that front seven as well. I Will Howard had to me. We know Will Howard can play well in big games. We saw it against Oregon. We know that. To me, it's about the defense. Will will the defense for either team step up? Because Indiana's defense has played really well this season, but again, they haven't seen an offense like Ohio State, which makes me a little iffy on them. And again, the last time Ohio State saw offense like Indiana, which was Oregon, they got sliced and diced again. That's going to be a really entertaining game. That's going to come to you 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. All right, I'll just talk about the Cavs got their first loss against the Celtics. Darius Garland was terrible. The Cavs impressed me even in the loss, and I'm going to tell you why. The Cavs were down 21 in this game, and their bench, I give them credit. They found a way to dig in and get them back in this game. They did. And the Celtics, they prove, look, we're the champs. We beat you, and we don't even got Porzingis back. I think the Celtics are still the favorite to get to the finals out the East, and out the East will probably win the championship. I like ones, but I'm like what I'm seeing from some of the teams right now. Golden State. I know OKC still a little injured. They lost the other night to San Antonio. I get it. They're a little injured right now. My shirt. My goodness. But yeah, I I think the Cavs now they obviously have back to back, so they're 16-1 now. Cleveland again gonna be really good for the rest of the year. Now, will they win 60 games? I'm not sure. It's looking like they can get to that, but it really all depends. You don't know if the injury's coming. You don't know what's coming. Some of my week 11 reactions. I just put it down. Anthony Richardson, as a Colts fan, huge. Best game as a pro, 20 for 30. He passed for 272. He had three tutties. He ran for two. He passed for one and ran for two. The Jets, putrid. Best game of Anthony Richardson's career. The Steelers beat the Ravens, mainly because the Steelers couldn't get out of their own way. Two missed field goals, three turnovers, 12 penalties, couldn't get out their own way. Ravens, they didn't have Derrick Henry in there on fourth down. Idiot, stupid. Dolphins are 4-6 in terms of the playoff hunt. They're still in it with the Colts, and obviously the Broncos are the 7th seed. But yeah, those are some notes. I think I'm actually gonna drop another vid today, giving my more in-depth thoughts about the NFL playoff picture. So we'll stop it here because I actually have to get to class, but we will stop it here and we will talk about more of the NFL playoff picture. I'll get another video up. It'll be shorter later today. But until that time, I will see you guys later. God bless. Take care.